Unfortunately, I don't have any filmed footage of this in action, but it is a very interesting design. Now, as noted, it features a memory card slot allowing players to earn points for use with the home version of the game. The tracks themselves also offer a nice mix of the best themes featured in GX, and the design feels slightly wider in general, perhaps to ensure better playability with the steering wheel. Unfortunately, actually finding a real arcade cabinet is not the easiest task in the world in most parts of the world, but there is one solution. The ROM hacking community has released a patch which essentially allows the arcade version, which is contained within the GX files, to boot directly on a GameCube via something like, say, Swiss. This basically means you can play the arcade game at home without the need to fully unlock the AX cup from the story mode. You need an original copy of the game ISO and a patching utility to create the resulting disk image, and load it up on your GameCube and you can play F-Zero AX. So yeah, the F-Zero GX and AX project was a moderate to large success. It sold roughly 1.5 million copies, but was critically well received. Alas, it would not receive a proper sequel, and Nagoshi's team at Amusement Vision ultimately went on to become the studio to build the Yakuza series. This was, in my opinion, the last truly great F-Zero game, but it wasn't the final release. There was still more in store for the F-Zero franchise. In 2002, as F-Zero Maximum Velocity saw great success, particularly in Japan, Nintendo optioned the franchise to become a mixed media property in the hopes that many characters, designs, and the settings would lead to popular manga or animation. Under the supervision of Miyamoto himself, as well as Takuya Imamura, the company scouted Ashi Productions, now known as Production Reed, to handle the introduction to a brand new world of F-Zero. Longtime screenwriter Sakai Akiyoshi was tasked to create an outline, while Ami Tomobuki was given the director's duty, as she had previously proven herself very skilled at creating character-driven connections in her work. In F-Zero Falcon Densetsu, viewers would be introduced to the world of F-Zero via a new character of Ryu Suzaku, a policeman who suffered an accident and was put on ice, so to speak, until the year 2201. When he is suddenly revived. His revival is for the assistance to the Mobile Task Force, who are seeking out the evil syndicate Dark Million organization run by Black Shadow. Worst yet, Ryu's arch nemesis from his own time, Zoda, has been revived by Dark Million as well, reigniting their rivalry in the future. In the midst of all this turmoil and crime is the F-Zero Grand Prix, promising prize money that could either fund crime if it falls into the wrong hands, or get rid of it should it land in the right hands, as well as a mysterious bounty hunter by the name of Captain Falcon. Owing a lot of inspiration from popular action films and cyberpunk entities, Falcon Densetsu includes elements of mysticism and fantasy more akin to Star Wars, and the series was commissioned for a full 51-episode run on TV Tokyo in late 2003. While initial numbers were positive, the show failed to hold an audience due to slightly uneven pacing and confusing plot twists, so the expansion into other media such as manga and toys was ultimately scaled back. Miyamoto himself was reportedly quite unhappy with the lack of strong plot lines and scrapped numerous plans for future projects of a similar nature. In the US, the show was localized by 4Kids as F-Zero GP Legend and ran for 15 episodes, focusing on that first story arc. For this version, names were changed, such as Ryu now being Rick Wheeler, as well as some additional content cuts to fit rating guidelines for children's television shows in the US during this time. Despite some popularity during the time, the series really never saw any home release, and despite some evidence that more episodes were produced for the English market, the remaining show never aired and faded from 4Kids rather quickly. Despite the attempts to create a franchise not really working out, a game tie-in was naturally inevitable. And yet again, on the Game Boy Advance, F-Zero would race on.
Down to 5 seconds.
F-Zero GP Legend on the Game Boy Advance landed in November 2003 in Japan. While ND Cube handled the development of Maximum Velocity, this brand new game would be handled by the relatively new company Suzak, headed by audio engineer and human entertainment employee Masahiro Yonezawa. Their work would follow closely in the vein of what ND Cube had done before them, but a few additions were made for GP Legend. The graphics engine and overall vehicle designs were overhauled to look closer to the original ship designs as seen in the anime, ridding itself of the overall pre-rendered nature of the prior game. The new engine also allows for slightly smoother feeling performance, and generally the stage designs are a lot tighter than those found in Maximum Velocity. However, this seems to come at a price, as there is a pretty strict limit on how many vehicles you'll see on the screen at the same time. You'll often only find yourself feeling as if you're the only one on the track. A total of 29 characters are on display though, many of which make their debut from the anime in this game. Perhaps the biggest change is to the overall gameplay, which takes a lot more inspiration from F-Zero X and really leans heavily on the bump mechanic rather than stark twists and turns, requiring you to literally bump yourself into the correct path to make the turn without crashing headfirst into a wall. The boost mechanic is also back in a familiar fashion, allowing you to make use of boosts from the second lap as long as you got the energy left to do it. Another element which Suzak really leaned heavily into is the pinball mechanic, that sense of your car bouncing all over the place when you hit a wall. While it is manageable, it's an aspect that would come to plague Suzak's overall F-Zero direction, and it can really make a tiny mistake that in any previous game in the series wouldn't be much of a concern, completely destroy your progress. In regards to modes, GP Legend is actually one of the better overall packages though, and allows for a ton of variety. The Grand Prix mode, time trials, and training modes, they're all here, but new to this game is also a story mode, as well as the Zero Test. In story mode, players take the journey through an abbreviated version of the anime, with dialogue and comic book panels in between stages, with each stage having different parameters in how to beat them. Throughout this mode, you'll unlock new characters with their own stories, and in turn, unlock them as well for use in other modes. Now in Zero Test, players are given various tests and challenges to solve across numerous classes and difficulties, with many of the later challenges really testing your skills and reflexes. It's pretty fun overall and adds a lot of replay value to the game, even though by the latter stages of this mode you might find yourself with skinned fingertips and hair loss. So it all sounds good on paper, right? And yeah, it's a pretty good game, especially in terms of overall content, but there's this feeling of fatigue to the formula with the flat track layouts and car designs that begins to set in. The music is better this time around, but nothing stands out considering the pedigree of the series. Visually speaking, the track parallax effect that was featured in Maximum Velocity has been dramatically improved to the point where there's even tracks that are transparent like this. It really does give the impression that you're driving across elevated tracks. As this was strangely an age of F-Zero and